Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, articles, research, our own notes, and we really try to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights. Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We aim for those surprising facts, maybe a little humor, just enough to keep you listening. And today, wow, we're taking a fascinating trip back in time, millennia back, actually. We're exploring an ancient philosopher whose ideas, and this is the wild part, still feel incredibly potent, incredibly useful for now. For our super fast-paced, information everywhere modern world? Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We're diving deep into Plato, his philosophy. We're going to pull out the most enduring wisdom we can find from the sources we've gathered. Specifically, we want to focus on how his big ideas, justice, knowledge, leadership, education, even the nature of reality itself, how these can actually serve as practical blueprints. Like a toolkit, almost, for navigating the 21st century. It's genuinely wild to think about, isn't it? How someone from ancient Greece, so long ago, could still be giving us guidance for today's challenges. It really is like finding some kind of timeless operating manual for being human.
It absolutely is wild. And what's so fascinating, I think, is that Plato isn't just, some historical figure stuck in old books or academic debates. He was grappling with things that are, at their heart, timeless human concerns. The big questions he has, like, what is truth? Really, how do we build a genuinely good society? What does it mean to be truly wise? These are pretty much the same deep questions we wrestle with every single day, whether we consciously think about it or not. His wisdom lasts because it just resonates so deeply with that universal human experience. Doesn't really matter what technology we have or how society changes. So looking into these ideas, it's not just an intellectual thing. It offers real practical benefits for how we live, how we think, how we deal with the world. It's really about cultivating a sharper mind, and maybe a more purposeful life.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly why this is so exciting to explore today. So let's jump right in. The first huge concept from Plato that, for me, just absolutely blows my mind with its modern relevance is his relentless search for truth and how he explained it through his theory of forms. Okay, so Plato's core idea here is, kind of mind-bending at first, but it also feels intuitive once you get it. He basically said that the physical world, everything we perceive with our senses, what we see, hear, touch, taste, smell, all of that, is really just a shadow. A shadow is a deeper, more fundamental reality. He wasn't saying it's not real exactly, but more like it's not the most real thing. Instead, he thought there's this underlying non-physical realm, the realm of what he called the forms. And these forms, they're perfect, eternal, unchanging, ideal versions of everything. Think of them like the ultimate blueprints, the pure archetypes for existence. So that specific chair you might be sitting on right now, it's just an imperfect copy, temporary, of the ideal form of chair. Or acts of courage, you see. They're just participating in the perfect ultimate form of courage and beauty.
Well, there's a perfect form of beauty that all beautiful things in our world are just, imperfect reflections of.
That's a great way to put it. And, to elaborate a bit, Plato developed this partly to solve a big philosophical fight happening back then. You had thinkers like Heraclitus saying everything's constantly changing, always in flux. And then Parmenides arguing for an unchanging, eternal reality. Plato's forms were kind of a brilliant solution, weren't they? He said, okay, the physical world is always changing, like Heraclitus saw. But these underlying forms, they are eternal and unchanging. And that's where true knowledge comes from, which is what Parmenides was after. These forms represent the pure essence, the perfect pattern of a thing or a concept. Our everyday experiences, everything we bump into in the physical world, they're just imperfect reflections, fleeting copies. It's like looking at a wonky reflection in a carnival mirror compared to the actual perfect original. For Plato, real knowledge wasn't about collecting facts about these flawed copies because they're always changing, decaying. No, true knowledge was about understanding the forms themselves. Stable, rational, perfect. It's like the difference between seeing a bunch of badly drawn circles in the sand versus understanding the mathematical idea of a perfect circle.
Okay, so that leads to the big question, right? What does this really abstract idea of forms mean for us today? In our world of, TikTok trends and constant viral noise, we're not literally sitting around trying to contemplate the perfect form of a coffee mug, are we? Although I have to admit, some of my mugs get pretty close.
No, probably not the ideal coffee mug itself, though I appreciate the dedication. But the idea translates directly into something incredibly powerful and relevant now. It encourages deep critical thinking and a really healthy skepticism towards just superficial appearances. Think about it. We live in an age just rife with misinformation, deepfakes blurring reality, algorithmic bubbles confirming our biases, and social media often just carefully curated snippets or emotionally charged fragments, basically surface-level stuff. Plato's focus on seeking the forms pushes us. It compels us to look beyond those immediate appearances, to seek deeper truths. It's like a philosophical framework that trains your mind to actively question the surface. It makes you ask, is what I'm seeing really real in its essence? Or is it just a fleeting, imperfect copy, just a shadow?
Ah, okay, I see. So it's not just being skeptical in general, it's more specific, a kind of intellectual discipline. It trains us to ask what's really going on here, right? It challenges us to look past the slick ad campaign, the crazy headline, the perfect online life someone presents, or even our own first impressions, which are often biased. Think about how often we just, scroll through a feed, see a bold headline, and just accept it without clicking, without checking who wrote it, without thinking about the agenda, or how a cleverly edited video clip can completely twist what actually happened. This Platonic idea, it's not just abstract thought. It prompts a real deep investigation into the underlying reality. It pushes you, the listener, to ask, is this what it seems to be? Is this the whole story? Or is it just, a cleverly made shadow designed maybe to mislead you or just get a reaction? It's about recognizing that what's presented isn't always what is.
Exactly. And consider how this applies to things like social media narratives or political talk. A single tweet can go viral, shape how thousands of people think. But it might be super curated, emotionally loaded, maybe even totally made up, a shadow of a much more complex truth. Plato would tell us to pause. Don't just swallow that shadow whole. He'd push us to investigate the underlying form, the actual facts, the full context, the different viewpoints that often get hidden underneath. It's about being wary of that immediate sensory hit and building a habit of seeking the deeper, more complete picture. Whether it's a politician's promise, a scientific claim someone shares, or even our own biases we haven't examined. It means asking, is this opinion I have truly informed, or is it just based on a convenient illusion I haven't questioned? It's a fundamental shift, really, from just passively consuming stuff to actively critically thinking. And the dangers of not doing this, well, you see it everywhere. Misinformation spreading like wildfire, society's getting more polarized.
That's incredibly powerful. Yeah. It's like having a built-in BS detector, but one that doesn't just say no. It says dig deeper, find the real story, the underlying form. Okay, let's pivot a bit. From this sort of abstract search for truth to something equally foundational, but maybe more practical on the surface. Plato's ideas about justice and the ideal society, which he laid out in incredible detail in his major work, The Republic. So, Plato's vision for a truly just society, as he described it in The Republic, it's fascinating. And maybe, a bit radical to us now. He basically argued that real justice in a society happens when everyone does what they are best suited for. It's kind of a meritocracy at its core, right? But driven not by who your parents were or how much money you have. It's driven by wisdom, natural talent, a deep alignment between what you're good at and what society needs. It's a pretty bold idea, even today.
It is bold. And he envisioned society divided into three main groups, each doing its specific job based on their inherent nature, their dominant soul part, as he saw it. You had the producers, farmers, artisans, merchants, people driven by appetite, basically. They provide the material stuff society needs. Then the warriors, or auxiliaries, driven by spirit, courage. They protect the state. And finally, the rulers, his famous philosopher-kings, driven by reason, by wisdom. And crucially, like you said, this wasn't about rigid class or birthright. Not at all. In fact, Plato's ideal state had this radical education system, designed specifically to spot each child's natural abilities early on, and then guide them towards the role they were suited for, no matter who their parents were. For the rulers, he even proposed things like communal property, no private families, all designed to stop corruption, to stop self-interest from messing up their focus on the common good. The core idea was, when each part does its job well, according to its nature, the whole society works harmoniously. That's collective justice for Plato.
Wow. That's such a profound concept. And if we, connect this to the bigger picture today, it gives us a really powerful lens to look critically at our own society, how we structure roles, how we prioritize fairness, and maybe most importantly, how we choose our leaders. It forces us to ask some pretty tough questions, doesn't it? Like, are the people in power today, politicians, CEOs, media figures, are they really the wisest, the most virtuous? Are they guided by reason and the common good? Or are they just the most ambitious, the best connected? Or maybe just the best at PR, at manipulating how people feel? And what about us, just regular individuals? Are people generally guided towards careers or paths based on their natural strengths, their predispositions, letting them contribute where they're best suited and find fulfillment? Or are they just funneled into paths by economic pressure, social trends, what their family expects, regardless of their real talents?
This is exactly where Plato's idealism becomes this really useful mirror for our own reality. I mean, imagine if a society was organized purely on natural ability and virtue. Think of the efficiency, the harmony. People might actually find deep fulfillment in their work because it matches who they are inside. Conflict could maybe be reduced because people aren't fighting for roles they're not suited for or chasing power just for themselves. But then the immediate challenge pops up, right? How do you actually objectively identify these natural abilities and virtues, especially in our complex world? How do you do that without falling into bias or creating a system that feels restrictive, limiting freedom or the chance to move up? And, as you hinted, how do you stop those who claim they're wise and virtuous from just grabbing power for themselves? These are the really thorny, practical questions that come up when you hold Plato's ideal next to our, let's face it, messy reality.
Exactly. It makes you think about how we do assign roles now. Who gets into top schools? Who climbs the corporate ladder? Who gets elected? Are we really trying to maximize collective well-being by putting people where their talents shine? Or are we just kind of perpetuating old power structures, maybe sacrificing potential for credentials that look good on paper? And it also pushes you, the listener, to think about your own role. Do you feel like your work, your life path, is aligned with your natural strengths? If you manage people, do you genuinely try to put them where their talents will blossom? Or do you just go with what's easy, or stick to the hierarchy? Are you contributing where you feel most capable, most fulfilled? It's a really personal reflection prompted by this huge societal blueprint.
And that reflection is so important. It pushes us past just accepting things as they are. It encourages us to actively think about how things could be structured better for everyone's benefit and for individual happiness, too. It nudges us to strive for a more just arrangement, even if Plato's exact plan seems, well, maybe a bit utopian.
Right. Okay, so from the structure of a just society, let's move smoothly to how individuals within that society gain real understanding, how they navigate that difficult journey. And this brings us to maybe Plato's most famous metaphor, the most evocative one. And honestly, one of the most profound impacts still today. Education as enlightenment, brought to life for the allegory of the cave. The allegory of the cave is just a masterpiece of philosophical storytelling, isn't it? A cornerstone of his whole educational philosophy. And a metaphor that still hits hard today. So picture this. You've got people chained up in a deep, dark cave since childhood. Their necks, their legs, all bound so they can only stare straight ahead at a wall. And all they've ever seen their whole lives are shadows flickering on that wall. These shadows are made by a fire burning behind them and puppeteers holding up objects between the fire and the prisoners. So these prisoners, they spend their entire lives watching these shadows, and they absolutely believe these shadows are reality. The only reality. The undeniable truth. For them, those shifting shapes. That is the world. Now imagine one prisoner is suddenly set free. What happens? Well, first, the light from the fire is blinding, painful, and the climb up out of the cave, it's rough, steep, disorienting, maybe even terrifying. But slowly, painfully, they start to adjust. They see the fire. They see the actual objects that were casting the shadows, and eventually they keep going. They make it out of the caves entirely. And they see the sun, the trees, the real world, in all its bright, three-dimensional clarity.
That image is just so powerful, isn't it? Because it perfectly captures that profound journey, often uncomfortable, yeah, but ultimately liberating, the journey to genuine understanding, enlightenment. In the allegory, the darkness of the cave that represents ignorance, the state of not knowing, or being limited by your assumptions, by superficial info, by comfortable illusions, the shadows are precisely those illusions. The false truths, the surface appearances, the incomplete stories that people just accept as real. And that hard process, breaking the chains, turning to the light, climbing out, adjusting your eyes to the sun, that represents the difficult, often painful, but ultimately freeing journey to real understanding. To seeing the world as it truly is beyond just illusion or comfortable lies. It's the process of waking up, intellectually and even spiritually.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting for us today, I think. This allegory highlights the profound value of real education. And Plato wasn't just talking about, what we often call education now, like getting a degree to get a job. He wasn't focused on narrow job skills or just memorizing facts, even though those things have their place. He was talking about the deeper transformative process of developing the mind, expanding your understanding of reality, challenging your own deepest assumptions, cultivating real wisdom. It represents stepping out of our own comfort zones, doesn't it? Pushing past our mental boundaries to see things more clearly, even if that first glimpse of truth is disorienting or painful. It's about the discomfort that comes with growth.
That discomfort, that initial blindness, that's a crucial part of it. Think about what happens when you really challenge a deeply held belief, one that's been like a foundational shadow in your own life, maybe a political view, a cultural norm you never question, or even a personal prejudice. It can be profoundly unsettling, right? It can even feel threatening to who you think you are because you've built your world around that shadow. Or when you finally grasp a totally new perspective on something complex, maybe a social issue, or a scientific concept that completely contradicts everything you thought you knew. That feeling of disorientation, of needing to rethink everything, rebuild your understanding. That's exactly the pain Plato describes, turning from the shadows toward the light. Yet the allegory promises that this pain is temporary. And the reward, it's a much richer, more accurate, and ultimately more fulfilling understanding of the world. And there's another critical bit often missed. The freed prisoner, having seen the light, feels a moral duty to go back into the cave, to try and enlighten the others. Even knowing they'll likely be mocked, maybe even attacked, by those who prefer the comfort of their chains and shadows. What does that tell us about the challenges of bringing truth to a world comfortable with illusion?
Wow. It's a powerful call to intellectual courage, then, to actively push past that initial discomfort when you encounter new information, different viewpoints. Don't just retreat. Don't be content with the easy answers or just what you've always been told. Instead, it's about actively seeking more light, even if it means letting go of some of your own comfortable shadows. And yeah, maybe risking the scorn of those still chained up. And this raises that important question for you, the listener. In your own life today, right now, what forms of shadows might you be mistaking for reality? What information, what beliefs are you just accepting without question? That maybe, with a bit more effort, a bit more courage, you could see in a truer, more complete light. It's an ongoing journey, isn't it? Deeply personal.
Indeed. It's a profound reminder that education isn't just something you finish. It's a lifelong process of seeking clarity, of climbing out of the cave again and again.
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys out of the cave, let's talk about the journey of leadership. Because Plato had some very strong, maybe even revolutionary, ideas about who should lead society, which brings us to his famous concept of the philosopher-king. Plato's idea of philosopher-kings. Yeah, that's probably one of his most radical proposals, and definitely controversial, especially when you look at it through our modern democratic perspective. He argued that the ideal leaders, the ones for a truly just society, shouldn't be the richest people, or the most charismatic, or the ones with the most military power, or even the most popular ones chosen in elections. No. Instead, leaders should be those individuals who have actually made that hard journey out of the cave, who understand the forms, who grasp truth and justice at the deepest level. These are people who rule, as you said, not for power or wealth, not for personal glory, but because they understand truth and justice. And because of that understanding, they are uniquely qualified to lead others toward what is good. They're compelled by wisdom, not by ambition.
That's the absolute core of it. And it's such a stark contrast to, well, most of human history, isn't it? Leadership, for Plato, had to be driven by unshakable wisdom and virtue, a deep, almost spiritual grasp of what's truly good and just for the whole community. Not personal ambition, not ego, not chasing money or fame. He believed only those who've truly understood the form of the good, who see reality clearly and get the ideal blueprint for human flourishing, only they are fit to guide others. In his republic, these philosopher-kings would go through decades of intense training. Intellectual, physical, studying math, astronomy, music, and most importantly, dialectic, the art of philosophical debate, all to prepare them. And interestingly, they wouldn't even want to rule, because let's face it, the world of politics is pretty shadowy compared to contemplating pure truth. But they would do it out of a sense of duty, because they are uniquely qualified to lead society toward its highest potential, guided only by reason.
Wow. Okay, this gives us an incredibly powerful model, doesn't it? Almost a moral yardstick to evaluate leaders today. It really highlights the difference between that ideal and maybe some of the leadership archetypes we see around us. When you look at current leaders, politicians, CEOs, community figures, you can kind of apply this Platonic lens. We often get swayed by charisma, right, or bold promises. But Plato forces us to ask, are the leaders we elect or choose to follow, are they truly wise and selfless, guided by a deep understanding of truth and the collective good? Or are they mostly driven by a thirst for power? Are they manipulative, focused on self-interest, personal gain, or maybe just really good at playing the political game? This framework helps you, the listener, think about how you vote, how you lead in your own life, your own sphere, how you organize things. It helps you do it with more integrity, maybe, because you have this higher standard, this ideal form of leadership to measure things against.
Think about the huge implications for accountability, for ethical governance. If this Platonic ideal were taken more seriously, if leaders truly sought wisdom and justice above everything else, not just getting reelected or making more money, imagine how political discussion would change dramatically. Decisions would, theoretically, be made for the long-term benefit of everyone. based on a rigorous, clear-eyed pursuit of truth, not short-term wins or partisan fights or just pleasing the loudest voices. Now, actually implementing a system like that, huge challenges, obvious critiques, potential for elitism, lack of democratic checks, sure. But Plato's vision still serves as this powerful aspiration, a kind of North Star for what leadership should aim for. It suggests a type of leadership that cares more about the health of the collective soul, you might say, than about being popular right now. That's a powerful idea in any time.
And it's not just about politicians, right? It applies to influential people everywhere. Tech leaders, media figures, cultural influencers. Who are the people shaping the stories we hear, the products we use, the values we're encouraged to adopt? Are they striving to be philosopher-kings, guided by truth and the common good? Or something else entirely?
Yeah.
This framework really forces you to think critically about who you let guide your world, and maybe even more importantly, how you lead in your own life.
Precisely. It makes you a more discerning follower, and maybe, yeah, a more principled and effective leader yourself, whatever your field is.
Okay, so from the specific role of leaders, let's broaden out a bit to Plato's overall philosophical outlook, which is really characterized by this powerful idealism, this constant unwavering focus on ethics. Plato's whole philosophy, really, it's soaked in this deep inherent idealism. He had this profound, unwavering belief in the possibility of perfect justice, perfect beauty, perfect good. Now, he wasn't naive about it. He wasn't simplistic. He definitely knew that in our messy material world, we might never fully reach them. He got the limits of human nature, the flaws in any real-world system. He understood complexity. But the belief itself, the idea that these ideals exist as forms that provided an ultimate, unchanging standard, a guiding light, something to inspire constant effort, continuous striving. It's the belief that perfection is a real concept, even if we can only ever get closer to it.
And that's the really crucial distinction, isn't it? This isn't just wishful thinking, expecting everything to be perfect tomorrow. Instead, it's this deep conviction in transcendent ideals. They serve as guiding stars, permanent benchmarks. They aren't just abstract ideas floating around. For Plato, they were ultimate realities. They give direction, a standard to measure everything against: actions, creations, whole societies. It's the belief that even though the journey toward perfection might be endless, the pursuit itself, that's incredibly valuable. It's transformative. It gives meaning to what we do. It's the conviction that there is a form of the good, an ultimate principle of order, harmony. And even if we can only ever approximate it in our complicated reality, that approximation, that continuous striving toward it, is worth every bit of effort. It's really the engine of progress, you could say.
And this idealism, this belief in higher perfect forms, it has had an astonishingly powerful impact on the modern world. Even if we don't always trace it back to Plato directly, it inspires social movements, justice reforms, and the arts. Just think about it. Every major civil rights movement, every big push for environmental protection, every fight for greater equality or human dignity, at their core, they're all driven by an idealistic vision, right? A vision of a better, more just, more fair world that doesn't fully exist yet. They were striving towards a form of justice they believe is real, attainable, or at least worth fighting like hell for, even when the odds seem impossible. And it's the same with art, isn't it? Artists often don't just copy reality. They try to capture the essence of beauty, to evoke feelings, ideas that point to something beyond the everyday, to touch on a perfect form. It's this idealism that fuels our desire to create something truly great, whether it's a perfect song or a perfectly just law.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how this belief in the good gives us this really solid framework for persistent effort. Even when perfection seems completely out of reach, it's a powerful antidote to cynicism. And cynicism is everywhere today, isn't it? It stops people from getting jaded, from just resigning themselves to that's the way things are. It reminds us that striving toward higher principles, pushing for what should be, is always worthwhile, even if the finish line keeps moving. Without that idealism, that belief in a better possibility, human progress might just stall. When you see a problem, instead of just shrugging and saying, well, it's always been this way, Plato encourages you to ask, okay, what is the ideal form here? How should things be? And how can we move even just a little bit closer to that vision? It's actually a very empowering philosophy. It tells us not to settle for just appearances, but to keep reaching for something transcendent.
Yeah, it provides the spiritual fuel, the ethical engine for any kind of real, meaningful change, whether it's the global fight for human rights or the tireless work to protect the environment against huge odds, or someone creating a piece of music or art that just elevates your spirit. These are all reflections of that inherent Platonic idealism deep down. They're examples of people reaching for that form of the good, even if the path is super long and twisty, and the goal always seems just a bit beyond reach. The striving itself becomes the point.
It's that continuous striving that defines us, that pushes us forward. And that striving comes from believing that something better, something truer, something more beautiful is possible and worth chasing for its own sake.
So, okay, we've done a real deep dive into Plato's enduring wisdom across these key areas. The search for truth, justice blueprints, education is waking up, that radical vision of leadership, the power of idealism. But now, the big personal question for you, our listener. So what does all this actually mean for you? How can you really use Plato's philosophy personally, right here, right now, in your daily life? Because this isn't just for dusty books, it's meant to be a practical guide. First, and maybe the most obviously useful one given today's world, question appearances. Don't just take things at face value. Seriously, in a world just flooded with information stuff designed to grab your attention, sway your opinion, maybe even manipulate how you feel, Plato's theory of forms is like a mental stop sign. Pause. Don't just accept the shadow. Look for the substance behind it. Don't be a prisoner stuck staring at the cave wall of easy answers.
Right. This means actively looking into motives, checking sources, thinking about the deeper meanings behind the info you encounter, whether it's a news story, an ad, a social media post, even just a casual comment someone makes. Ask yourself, what's the underlying reality here? What assumptions are buried in this? What's being shown? And maybe more importantly, what isn't being shown? What's being left out? If a headline feels too neat, too outrageous, or just too convenient for a certain viewpoint, Plato would say, okay, dig deeper. This active critical skepticism is such a crucial skill for getting through modern life without just being swept along. For becoming truly informed, not just fed info and reacting to shadows, it's about nurturing your inner truth seeker.
Second big takeaway, pursue lifelong learning, but with that specific Platonic spin. Remember, true education for Plato wasn't just about job skills or collecting facts, it was about becoming wiser. It's that continuous, sometimes, uncomfortable journey out of the cave, the journey of improving your mind, your soul.
Exactly. Make a distinction in your own mind between just becoming more employable or knowing a lot about one narrow thing and genuinely developing your mind, expanding your understanding. Cultivating wisdom. This means engaging with ideas that challenge you, reading widely, outside your usual stuff, seeking out different perspectives, even ones you disagree with, and constantly refining your own internal map of reality. It's about intellectual growth, moral development, broadening your worldview, not just job training. The goal is always to move closer to understanding those forms, to seeing more clearly, and living a more reasoned, thoughtful life. Think of it like constantly upgrading your mental operating system.
Third, reflect on justice. In your own life, in
Yeah.
your community, Plato's big vision of a just society, everyone doing what they're best suited for, contributing to the common good, that's not just for philosophers or governments to think about. It's a really personal challenge, and it ripples outwards from you.
It encourages you to personally examine what fairness really looks like right where you are, in your relationships, your workplace, your neighborhood, your family. Are you truly playing the role you feel best suited for? Or are you kind of forcing yourself into a mold that doesn't fit, which maybe leads to feeling dissatisfied and maybe not contributing your best? Are you contributing in a way that really uses your natural strengths? Or are you just letting outside pressures push you around? And are you advocating, in your own small ways, for arrangements that are genuinely just and based on merit? Or just what's convenient, or what benefits you personally? Thinking about this can lead to some profound improvements, personally and with others. It can foster more harmony right around you.
Fourth point, choose your influences wisely. This one feels super relevant today. In a world where literally anyone can be an influencer online, Plato's idea of philosopher-kings gives us this incredible high benchmark, a powerful contrast to the often shallow nature of modern influence.
Yeah, this means being really discerning. Who do you follow? Whose opinions do you actually value? Where do you get your information? Actively seek out mentors, leaders, information sources that seem genuinely aimed toward truth, wisdom, the common good, not just popularity or personal gain or getting clicks and likes. It's about consciously curating your intellectual and ethical environment, aligning yourself with people who are trying to see the world more clearly and act with integrity. It's about surrounding yourself as much as possible with those who embody that journey out of the cave, not those who are happy just casting more shadows for others.
And finally, maybe the most profound personal takeaway of all, live by ideals. Don't let cynicism win. In a world that often feels broken, imperfect, chaotic, Plato offers us a compelling reason to keep striving for something better.
Use that idea of a form of the good as your personal compass, your North Star. Even if you know you'll never achieve absolute perfection in your character, your relationships, your choices, the continuous striving, the effort to aim higher, that's what truly matters. It's about embodying Integrity, kindness, courage, wisdom, not just once in a while, but as deeply ingrained habits that shape who you are. This lifelong journey towards those ideals is what gives life deep meaning. It keeps you from getting jaded by all the world's imperfections. It's the pursuit itself that defines you, even if the destination always seems just out of reach. And the very act of reaching for that ideal, it makes you, and maybe the world around you, incrementally better.
So as you can hopefully see, Plato's ancient wisdom, forged thousands of years ago in a totally different world, it really does remain profoundly relevant today. It offers powerful tools. Tools for navigating our modern lives, for making sense of the noise, and for building a more informed, more just, and more meaningful existence for ourselves and others.
Looking beyond the surface, actively striving for truth, pursuing real transformative education, demanding moral leadership, and living by high ideals, those are the central, actionable takeaways from Plato, I think. And they can truly transform how you experience the world and how you interact with it. They offer a blueprint, really, not just for a perfect society, maybe, but definitely for a well-lived life.
As we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought to chew on, something provocative maybe. Consider this. If we as individuals, and maybe as communities too, constantly aimed for the ideal form of ourselves, of our relationships, our communities, our leaders, how might that continuous striving, that constant reaching actually reshape our world? Nudging it, maybe slowly, closer and closer to that perfect blueprint, even if absolute perfection always stays just beyond our grasp. The journey perhaps really is the true destination. That's it for this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving.